One of the greatest mistakes a person can make is allowing problems to become the center of their attention. What occupies the mind eventually shapes the heart, and what shapes the heart ultimately influences the direction of life. Many people wake up each day already burdened by worries about tomorrow. They replay painful conversations, dwell on unanswered questions, and imagine worst-case scenarios that may never happen. In doing so, they gradually give their problems a position of authority they were never meant to have. The human mind has a remarkable ability to magnify whatever it focuses on. A small concern can become a giant fear when it is examined repeatedly. A temporary setback can appear permanent when viewed through the lens of anxiety. The challenge itself may not grow, but our perception of it certainly does. This is why two people can face the same difficulty and respond in completely different ways. One is overwhelmed by fear, while the other remains calm and steady. The difference is often not found in the size of the problem, but in the object of their focus. Life constantly presents circumstances that seem larger than our strength. Unexpected losses arrive without warning. Doors close when we expected them to open. Plans fall apart despite our best efforts. Relationships become strained. Opportunity disappear. In such moments, it is easy to become consumed by disappointment. The mind naturally searches for explanations, solutions, and guarantees. Yet the more we attempt to control every outcome, the more exhausted we become. There is a profound difference between recognizing a problem and becoming obsessed with it. Wisdom acknowledges reality, but fear becomes enslaved to it. Wisdom seeks guidance, while fear endlessly circles around uncertainty. Wisdom moves forward despite unanswered questions, while fear remains trapped in endless speculation. Many people spend years imprisoned by circumstances, not because their situation is impossible, but because their attention never rises above it. The soul was never designed to draw strength from circumstances. Circumstances are unstable by nature. They shift with time, change without warning, and often move beyond our control. If our peace depends entirely upon favorable conditions, then peace will always remain fragile. Every unexpected challenge will threaten it. Every setback will shake it. Every delay will weaken it. True stability must come from something greater than the changing conditions of life. When a person learns to focus on God rather than problems, a remarkable shift begins to occur. The circumstances may remain the same for a season, but perspective changes. Fear no longer dominates every thought. Anxiety loses its power to control the imagination. The heart becomes anchored in something deeper than temporary conditions. Confidence begins to replace panic because attention has moved from human limitation to divine sufficiency. Many individuals believe they need more answers before they can have peace, yet peace is rarely found through complete understanding. Human understanding has limits. There will always be mysteries we cannot solve and questions we cannot answer. If peace depends upon knowing everything, then peace will always remain beyond reach. The deeper source of peace is trust. Trust allows a person to move forward even when explanations are incomplete. Trust enables courage when certainty is unavailable. The reason focus matters so much is because attention directs expectation. When people constantly focus on problems, they begin expecting failure. They anticipate disappointment before it arrives. They prepare for defeat before the battle even begins. Their minds become filled with images of loss, struggle, and frustration. Over time, these expectations influence their attitudes, decisions, and emotions. Faith directs expectation differently. Faith does not pretend difficulties do not exist. Instead, faith recognizes that problems are not the highest authority. Faith understands that circumstances are temporary while God's power is eternal. It acknowledges obstacles without surrendering to them. It recognizes weakness without forgetting divine strength. This perspective creates resilience that cannot be produced by positive thinking alone. Throughout life, there will always be reasons to worry. There will always be challenges demanding attention. There will always be situations that appear impossible from a human perspective. Yet history repeatedly demonstrates that the greatest breakthroughs often emerge from the most difficult circumstances. What initially appeared to be a disaster later became a blessing. What seemed like a closed door ultimately led to a better path. What felt like a delay became preparation for something greater. This truth becomes visible only when people stop measuring life solely by present circumstances. Problems often convince us that the current moment is the entire story. They narrow our vision until we can see nothing beyond immediate pain or uncertainty. Yet God sees the complete picture. He sees beginnings and endings simultaneously. He sees opportunities hidden within obstacles. He sees growth developing within hardship. He sees purpose unfolding through experiences that seem confusing to us. The challenge for many people is that they spend far more time talking about their problems than reflecting on God's faithfulness. They rehearse their fears repeatedly. They revisit their disappointments constantly. They analyze every obstacle from every angle. Meanwhile, they rarely pause to remember the countless ways they have been sustained, protected, guided, and provided for throughout their lives. Gratitude changes perspective because it shifts attention from what is lacking to what has already been given. It reminds the heart that God's faithfulness did not begin today. He has carried people through previous storms, previous uncertainties, and previous battles. The same faithfulness that sustained them before remains available now. When attention remains fixed on God, circumstances lose their ability to define identity. A financial setback no longer determines worth. A failure no longer determines destiny. A disappointment no longer determines the future. Problems become events that a person experiences rather than labels that a person carries. This distinction is powerful because many individuals unknowingly allow temporary struggles to become permanent definitions of who they are. A focused heart develops endurance. It learns to remain steady during uncertainty. It discovers strength that does not depend upon favorable conditions. It finds courage in difficult seasons and hope in challenging moments. Such a heart understands that while problems may occupy part of the journey, they do not control the destination. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to trust more deeply, believe more confidently, and walk more faithfully through whatever lies ahead. Faith is often misunderstood. Many people imagine faith as a feeling that removes all fear, eliminates every doubt, and guarantees immediate answers. They assume that a person of faith never struggles, never questions, and never faces moments of uncertainty. Yet real faith is something far deeper and far more powerful. Faith is not the absence of difficulty. It is the decision to trust God even when circumstances remain unchanged. It is choosing confidence when visible evidence seems scarce. It is continuing to walk forward when the road ahead is hidden by shadows. Life rarely unfolds according to human expectations. Plans are interrupted, opportunities vanish, prayers appear unanswered, doors that seem destined to open suddenly close. In these moments, people often find themselves standing at a crossroads. One path leads toward fear, frustration, and discouragement. The other leads toward trust. The circumstances may be identical, but the response determines whether the soul grows stronger or weaker. Faith begins where human certainty ends. As long as everything makes sense, trust requires very little effort. It is easy to feel confident when the future appears secure. It is easy to remain hopeful when every prayer seems to receive an immediate answer. It is easy to believe when the path is clear and the destination is visible. Yet the true strength of faith is revealed when none of these conditions exist. There are seasons in life when God seems silent. The answers we seek do not arrive. The solutions we expected fail to appear. We cry out for direction and hear only stillness. During these moments, many people assume that silence means abandonment. They conclude that because they cannot see God's activity, He must not be working. Yet, some of the most important work God accomplishes takes place beneath the surface, hidden from human sight. A seed buried beneath the ground appears lifeless before it begins to grow. A foundation is laid before a building rises into view. Preparation often occurs long before results become visible. In the same way, God frequently works in unseen ways before revealing what He has been accomplishing all along. Faith allows a person to trust this process even when immediate evidence is unavailable. One of the greatest challenges people face is the temptation to judge God's faithfulness by their present circumstances. When life is comfortable, they feel confident. When difficulties arise, they begin to doubt. Their trust rises and falls with the changing conditions around them. Yet circumstances are unreliable indicators of divine activity. Difficult seasons do not mean God has forgotten. Delays do not mean God has denied. Silence does not mean God is absent. Faith recognizes that God's perspective is infinitely greater than our own. Human beings see a single chapter. God sees the entire story. We focus on the present moment, but God sees the destination. We often judge situations by immediate outcomes, while God works according to eternal purposes. What appears to be a setback may actually be preparation. What feels like a delay may be protection. What seems like a closed door may be guidance toward a better path. Trusting God during uncertainty requires humility, because it forces us to admit that our understanding is limited. Human nature desires complete explanations. We want to know why things happen. We want every question answered. We want assurance that everything will work out according to our preferences. Yet faith often asks us to move forward without possessing all the information we desire. This is where many people struggle. They are willing to trust God as long as they can understand His plan. They are willing to follow Him as long as the outcome aligns with their expectations. But faith does not depend upon complete understanding. Faith depends upon confidence in God's character. It rests not in knowing every detail of the journey, but in knowing the one who leads it. Consider how often fear attempts to dominate the mind. Fear whispers that circumstances will never improve. It predicts failure before the battle begins. It magnifies obstacles and minimizes possibilities. Fear constantly demands visible proof before it agrees to move forward. Yet faith operates by a different principle. Faith acknowledges challenges, but refuses to give them ultimate authority. It understands that God's power is not limited by human circumstances. Many of the greatest moments of spiritual growth occur during seasons of waiting. Waiting is difficult because it confronts our desire for control. We want immediate answers. We want quick solutions. We want certainty. Yet waiting often becomes the classroom where faith develops maturity. During these periods, trust is refined, patience is strengthened, and character is deepened. The person who never faces difficulty may never discover the depth of God's sustaining power. The individual who never encounters uncertainty may never experience the peace that surpasses understanding. The soul that never walks through darkness may never fully appreciate the value of divine guidance. Trials reveal truths that comfort alone cannot teach. Faith does not deny reality. It does not pretend that pain does not exist, or that challenges are insignificant. Genuine faith is honest about difficulties. It acknowledges sorrow, disappointment, and struggle. Yet it refuses to allow these realities to define the final outcome. Faith sees beyond the immediate problem and remembers that God remains sovereign over every circumstance. There are moments when all visible evidence appears to contradict hope. The situation seems impossible. The odds seem overwhelming. Human resources appear insufficient. Yet these are often the moments when faith shines brightest. When people reach the limits of their own strength, they become more aware of their need for divine strength. When human solutions fail, they learn to depend more fully upon God's wisdom. The history of every transformed life contains chapters of uncertainty. Every testimony includes seasons when answers were delayed, challenges persisted, and doubts attempted to gain control. Yet those who continued trusting discovered that faithfulness is often revealed gradually, rather than instantly. The breakthrough eventually arrived. The purpose became clearer. The lessons gained value. What once appeared confusing later became meaningful. Faith is not measured by how loudly a person speaks about trust during easy times. It is measured by the quiet determination to keep trusting when circumstances provide every reason to quit. It is choosing hope when despair seems easier. It is maintaining confidence when visible evidence appears limited. It is continuing to believe in God's goodness when life feels complicated and uncertain. The strongest faith is not developed in comfort, but in perseverance. It grows when people repeatedly choose trust over fear, obedience over convenience, and confidence over doubt. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen spiritual endurance. Each trial becomes a chance to discover more about God's faithfulness. Each difficult season becomes a reminder that divine promises remain true regardless of changing circumstances. A life built upon faith possesses a stability that circumstances cannot destroy. Success does not create it, and failure cannot remove it. Favorable conditions do not sustain it, and difficult seasons cannot eliminate it. Such faith remains steady because its foundation rests upon the unchanging character of God rather than the changing conditions of life. The person who learns this truth discovers a source of strength that remains available through every storm, every uncertainty, every delay, and every challenge that lies ahead. Every trial that enters a person's life carries with it a hidden opportunity. At first glance, difficulties often appear to be interruptions, obstacles, or unwanted burdens. They arrive unexpectedly, challenge our plans, and force us into situations we would never choose for ourselves. The natural response is to resist them, question them, or attempt to escape them as quickly as possible. Yet many of life's deepest lessons and greatest transformations are born from the very trials we wish had never come. What appears to be a setback may actually be a stage upon which God reveals His strength, wisdom, and purpose in ways that could never be seen during seasons of comfort. Human beings naturally seek ease. We prefer certainty over uncertainty, comfort over struggle, and success over failure. There is nothing unusual about this desire, yet growth rarely occurs in places where everything remains comfortable. A muscle becomes stronger only when it encounters resistance. Character develops when it is tested. Courage emerges when fear must be confronted. In the same way, spiritual maturity often grows through challenges rather than convenience. Many people view trials as evidence that something has gone wrong. They assume that difficulties indicate divine absence or disapproval. When problems arise, they immediately ask why. Why did this happen? Why now? Why me? These questions are understandable, but they can sometimes prevent people from recognizing a more important truth. Trials are not always signs that God is absent. Often they are opportunities for God to demonstrate His presence in a deeper and more meaningful way. Consider how different life would be if every challenge were removed. There would be no need for perseverance because nothing difficult would exist. There would be no opportunity to develop patience because everything would happen immediately. There would be little reason to trust because every answer would already be visible. The qualities that define strong character are often forged in circumstances that initially appear undesirable. God's strength is most clearly displayed when human strength reaches its limits. As long as people believe they can handle everything on their own, they often remain unaware of their dependence upon Him. Success can create an illusion of self-sufficiency. Comfort can encourage complacency. Achievement can tempt individuals to rely entirely upon their own abilities. Yet trials have a way of revealing how limited human resources truly are. There comes a moment in many struggles when personal effort alone is no longer enough. The answers cannot be manufactured. The solutions cannot be forced. The obstacles cannot be removed through sheer determination. It is often at this point that people begin to look beyond themselves. What initially seemed like a devastating weakness becomes an invitation to discover divine strength. Throughout history, some of the most remarkable demonstrations of faith have emerged from circumstances that appeared impossible. People faced situations that exceeded their abilities, challenged their understanding, and threatened their hopes. Yet those very circumstances became the setting in which God's power was revealed. The trial itself did not possess the final word. Instead, it became the backdrop against which divine faithfulness could be seen more clearly. Trials also reveal wisdom that would otherwise remain hidden. During easy seasons, people often move through life without deeply examining their priorities. Success can create distractions, comfort can conceal weaknesses, prosperity can encourage dependence on temporary things. Difficulty, however, has a way of exposing what truly matters. It strips away illusions and forces individuals to evaluate the foundations upon which they have built their lives. Many people discover during hardship that the things they once considered essential are not as important as they believed. Titles lose significance. Material possessions lose their power. Public approval becomes less valuable. The soul begins to seek something deeper and more enduring. Trials often redirect attention toward eternal truths that comfort and success may have obscured. Wisdom gained through suffering possesses a unique depth. Lessons learned in struggle are rarely forgotten. They become part of a person's character. Someone who has walked through uncertainty understands trust differently than someone who has only read about it. Someone who has experienced loss understands compassion differently than someone who has never faced grief. Someone who has endured hardship often develops a sensitivity, humility, and perspective that cannot be acquired through easier paths. Purpose is another truth frequently revealed through trials. Many people assume that purpose is discovered only through achievement or success. Yet purpose often emerges through challenges. Some of the most meaningful contributions people make are born from experiences they never wanted. The person who has overcome adversity becomes equipped to encourage others facing similar battles. The individual who has walked through pain often develops a unique ability to offer hope to those who are suffering. What initially seemed like a burden may later become a source of ministry, influence, and impact. The struggle itself becomes part of the preparation, the pain becomes part of the testimony, the challenge becomes part of the calling. God often uses the very experiences people would choose to avoid as instruments for shaping their future purpose. One of the greatest dangers during a trial is the temptation to believe that the trial is meaningless. Pain naturally demands explanations. When answers do not come quickly, discouragement begins to grow. People start believing that their suffering serves no purpose and that their difficulties are merely random events. Yet God specializes in bringing meaning out of circumstances that appear confusing. The story is rarely complete while the trial is still unfolding. What seems senseless today may become understandable later. What appears wasted may ultimately prove valuable. Many people look back on difficult seasons and realize that those experiences prepared them for opportunities they could never have anticipated. The wisdom they gained, the strength they developed, and the character they acquired became essential for what lay ahead. Trials also reveal the reliability of God's promises. It is one thing to believe in faithfulness when life is easy. It is another thing to experience that faithfulness during seasons of uncertainty. Difficulties provide opportunities to discover that God's presence remains constant, even when circumstances change. They reveal that His strength is available when personal strength fails. They demonstrate that His wisdom exceeds human understanding. Every challenge contains the possibility of transformation. Not everyone who experiences hardship grows from it, but everyone has the opportunity to do so. The difference often lies in perspective. Those who view trials solely as obstacles become consumed by frustration. Those who recognize them as opportunities begin looking for lessons, growth, and evidence of God's work. This perspective does not eliminate pain. Difficulties remain difficult. Loss remains painful. Delays remain frustrating. Yet hope emerges when people understand that suffering is not wasted. Even the darkest seasons can produce valuable fruit. Even the hardest battles can shape stronger character. Even the most confusing circumstances can serve a greater purpose than is immediately visible. When viewed through the lens of faith, trials become more than obstacles to endure. They become opportunities to witness God's strength when human strength is insufficient, His wisdom when answers seem absent, and His purpose when circumstances appear uncertain. They become reminders that no struggle enters life without the possibility of producing something meaningful, valuable, and lasting in the hands of God.